My name's Heather Sinclair. I'm the CEO of the Creative Enterprise Initiative. And I want to say thank you all for coming tonight. And I'm just going to check who's hanging back there at the bar or in the room, because we all know how people will chit-chat while we're talking. So hopefully people will make their way in here. The format for tonight, Roger Farwell and I, our chair of the board of the Creative Enterprise Initiative, will just give a brief update to remind you of where we've come from and talk a little bit about what we're doing right now in terms of our strategic priorities. And then we'll have some guest speakers, really quick, some updates on our investment program, and open it up to Q&A. So I anticipate, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, depending on how many wonderful questions everybody has tonight. So on that note, I'm just going to pass it over to Roger. And I will say, sorry, before I do so, that we are videotaping again, as we've done with the prior two community updates, so that we can post this online afterwards. So speak loudly and clearly. We'll have microphones for you as well.
Thank you, Heather, and welcome everybody. I'm here on behalf of the board of the Creative Enterprise Initiative, obviously. And what we've been doing is traveling the region. This is our third update, as Heather said, or conversation, I'll say more accurately, because tonight's all about providing some information, but inviting you, as much as anything, to ask any and all questions that you might have. We know it's a sort of complex agenda that's been unfolding for some time, and sometimes there's confusion reigns, and we want to make sure that we're absolutely trying to answer those questions and make sure there's clarity between all of you and the enterprise. So for some of you, I'm going to be a broken record at the moment, because I have to repeat a couple of things that are historical in nature, but to give you a bit of a retrospective and to make sure those of you that are new in the room understand how this initiative was born, which is essentially, has its roots in 2003 or so, when the Prosperity Council, which is a federation of the Chambers of Commerce of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo area and Cambridge, along with Communitech, our technology association, essentially our chamber for technology, and Canada's Technology Triangle, who markets us to the world but also looks for direct foreign investment in reverse here, came together to establish a good to great agenda. There were cries from every corner of the region that talent was a premium, if not, not available, and a lot was unfolding in the community that required a lot of creative talent to be on the ground to drive prosperity and build out our next economy. And so in the early days, that was an agenda, by the way, that the Prosperity Council said we would hold ourselves responsible to for a 10-year period, so 2003 to 13 in particular, and I think it'll go on past that. But it very quickly went to work on things like branding of the region, so there was a better understanding across the world of who we were and where we were. Work immediately on health, both in terms of getting healthcare facilities built out and finding practitioners and specialists to equip those facilities. So the cardiac center that you've seen built at St. Mary's, the oncology at Grand River, Cambridge, thankfully and finally underway. All of those things were essential to have infrastructure to serve people that were coming. And then post-secondary education was another big one. A lot of consultations on pre-budget federal and provincial budgets to drive development and infrastructure at our universities and at the college. So evidence of that you're seeing in both Laurier and certainly at the University of Waterloo with the kind of research park work that's going on. Quantum Nano, any number of those things. And Conestoga College, as you know, has just opened, well, Friday will open 253,000 feet of the 1,000,000 square feet that are planned for the campus south of the 401 in Cambridge. So, all good things. And then there certainly was, as you can imagine, community development being planned along those lines, a recognition that arts and culture was something that we also needed to work on as a community across the entire region. And that gesture was made, and it wanted to look at a development and promotion body that would drive arts and culture as well as live workspace and a few other things. And as we started to address that in 2007, was the first forum down at what's now the Conrad Center, it quickly gave way to this notion of creative enterprise, which had to do with not only reinforcing and strengthening traditionally defined arts and culture, but looking at intersections of art, science, and technology so that creative class workers and all early stage companies would be included in that kind of dialogue. So that's why this is a very broad agenda that wants to just stimulate creative endeavor and have that very much up on the surface. And that's the work we're at right now. To do that, there was a recommendation in 2009 to strike the Creative Enterprise Initiative and to create a board, which happened in March of 2010. It's a volunteer board of about 20 people that are invested across the community. Some from our public sector area, so our 4 CAOs from the municipalities in the region essentially are members, along with members of the artistic community in music, visual arts, and so on, performing arts, and then a number of private sector volunteers as well. And so that's where we come from, and Heather's going to take you through a bit of a program to help you understand where we're at right now. And then what I want to again encourage is that when we get to the Q&A period, that we just open up a real conversation amongst the room to make sure we've got lots of clarity and understanding. Thanks.
Great. There's lots of room down in this corridor, so if people want to come in.
Thanks, Stephen. And I neglected to say thank you when we first got here to Stephen Priest and the Jazz Room for hosting us here tonight. It's wonderful to have this environment and to be here and show off the space. It's certainly come a long way since I first came here about, I think it was 8 or 10 months ago, and I think there was a very different environment here, so it's lovely. And thank you, Roger. So Roger's got, as many of you know, the breadth and depth of the history of how Creative Enterprise Initiative came to be. And I've been on the job now for about 10 months, and so I'll speak a little bit about what we've been doing over the past. We've sort of been trying to get the infrastructure in place and at the same time showing action and just really getting on the ground and making stuff happen as is our mandate. So for initially what we did is we got out into the community, we developed some relationships, or I developed the relationships with that were already existing, but for me with CTT and tourism, so that people know that we're working closely with them in terms of aligning our strategies. We meet and have conversations almost every week and have a monthly regular meeting. We align our strategies from a long-term standpoint, so we're working on that as well to make sure that we dovetail with each other. So if from a sort of on-the-ground grassroots standpoint, Creative Enterprise Initiative is working to do what we can to enable the sector, and then working in partnership with tourism when activities or festivals or events and so on are ready to be marketed and promoted beyond the region to attract people in, and also to market and promote those activities to sell tickets or hotels, etc. We really work closely on that kind of stuff, and will continue to do so, as well with CTT. We're diving a little bit more deeply into that. We've been spending a little bit of time working on our infrastructure. For those of you who know, we have a footprint down in the tannery. Right now the footprint's about 8 by 10. In a cinder block room with no windows, and we'll be moving to a larger space, about 1,000 square feet in the new space, with some donated services from Communitech on that. And that space that we'll be using in that building will be 2/3 for the community. As soon as we can outfit it and get it ready, it will be available for meetings, it will be available for having a temporary office or whatever it needs. So we're going to take about 1/4 of that or 1/3 of that, and the rest we'll figure out how to engage the community to be able to use those facilities. Likewise, we're looking at some space in Uptown Waterloo, and those conversations are still going on, as well down in Cambridge. We will be looking at a smaller footprint down there as well. I'm just trying to think in terms of administratively, as Roger mentioned, we've got the board in place, we've been working on governance and getting our basic policies in place and our accounting and bookkeeping and so on. And then in July of this past year, we formalized our 18-month strategic priorities. So from July out to December of 2012, we worked on really building off the strategic plan that the board had put in place, a 3-year strategic plan, and we've really condensed it down into 4 key priorities to try and simplify the messaging. And those 4 key priorities are: number 1, to secure investment for the sector. So in addition, and building off of the municipal support that has now gone into its 3rd year for the sector, the dollar per capita that has been mentioned within the community. So those dollar per capitas have been secured for the sector, and the majority of that goes into the sector. We will be seeking and are in the midst of seeking further investment from the private sector, so the businesses within the community, from the federal funders, and from the province as well. And that's a major #1 priority for the next 12 months for the organization and for myself. The second priority is about providing resources to the community. So examples of those resources would be access to expertise and things like the next phase of the web portal that we're building out. So access to expertise, many of you might have heard of our Speed Dating Funding 101 event that we're holding on February 1st at the Tannery. And we've got 11 funders participating in that, 9 funding organizations from municipal, provincial, just municipal and provincial within that. And we've got over 85 participants from the community, and that's just within the last week that we've had 85 participants register. And so it really is about connecting people one-on-one with the funders to sort of engage, understand if what you think you might be eligible for, whether or not you are. So that's an example of resources that we will provide. In addition to the arts portal, which we are building out off the work that the RAC had already put together and taking it to the next level. And we've had, I think, 14 submissions, RFP responses for that, and we're working to define who the shortlist will be and carry that forward. And within that portal, just to address something so that people know, because the question often comes up, we do have the arts section within the tourism site, and we will be working closely again with tourism to share information, not duplicate submission of information or dissemination of information, but to work together in terms of audience development and market development, because we will represent a large section, as will tourism, but tourism may not be promoting all of the things that we'll want to promote. The other part of our portal will also be as a resource and tool, so that all the learning and tools that we develop, so whether it's access to all of these funders and having their information available, we'll be posting that online, so it becomes sort of a library or an information resource for the sector. The third strategic priority is about services. And services, the perfect example for that would be our newly formed relationship with the Greater KW Chamber of Commerce, and providing access to individual freelancers, small creative sector businesses, to secure a membership with the Chamber through Creative Enterprise Initiative. And through that membership, facilitating the opportunity to have access to group benefit rates for health and dental benefits. So that's a program, that's an example of a service that we'll be providing for the sector, and that will be activated on February 6th. We will start to take phone calls and facilitate that. And anybody that's interested or wants to know more about that program can email to rose@creativeenterprise.ca or info@creativeenterprise.ca as well. And the fourth strategic priority over the next year is about investing back into the community. So as we're securing new funds, regardless of where they come from, we will be investing it back into those the two priorities, so resources and services. And we will look at doing another phase of our initial investment program that we did. And many of you might be aware of the first one that we did last year, which was focused on if we could provide up to $10,000 to any one initiative, festival event, individual artist, what have you, how would you use that money to drive sustainable revenues for your activity? So we had 59 responses, and we provided the investment dollars out to 12 organizations, and 11 of them are currently active. We had one organization that decided that they wanted to do something different with their funds, so they returned the money to us, which was $500, and we're sitting on it because we're still working with them to try and help them take advantage of that investment. And on that note, I actually wanted to bring up, we have Rob Damon, who was one of our recipients. If you wanted to just say a few words, Rob, about how that program worked for you.
Thanks, Heather. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, let's give it up for the musicians who are playing for you today. My music is always the best. My name is Rob Damon. I'm the president of the board of Kitchener Blues Community Inc. We're the not-for-profit that produces the Kitchener Blues Festival. We're quite happy with the way the festival has evolved over its 12-year history. We're at a pretty critical juncture in our history, and we applied for and received funding and investment from the Creative Enterprise to assist us in doing a 3 to 5 year strategic plan. We are a very large festival in this region now, very, I think, I hope, highly regarded part of the arts community, and is, hopefully we're on everybody's arts calendar in the year, and if we're not, I want you to mark August 9th to 12th in this summer, because those are our dates. The investment in our strategic planning is critical to us and our board right now. We need to take a look at governance, we need to take a look at our revenues, and we need to take a look at our growth options facing us in the next 3 to 5 years. And the key for us is going to be sustainability, and to ensure that the festival continues to be successful and continues to be a big part of the art scene, especially during the summer. So we wanted to thank Creative Enterprise, and without their investment, we probably still have done the strategic plan, but it was certainly a huge part of assistance that is going to enable this process that we're undertaking now to be very successful, and we very much appreciate it and acknowledge that.
Thanks, Rob. So we just thought it might be a little more interesting than listening to Roger and I talk all the time. And then I wanted to ask Martin de Groot and Gabriel, I don't know where you are, to just come up and talk. Another recipient.
We're part of the, up on the stage.
Yes. Yeah, Phil's providing a stage direction.
We're part of the Arts and Education Initiative, and that's a loose project that's kind of a parallel to Art Smarts Waterloo Region, which was a project of the Arts Council and other partners. And we received funding in the first round of that investment program, basically to hire someone. Our thought was that if the larger art organizations have education officers and marketing people, but the smaller ones don't. And we were working with partners like the Button Factory and Empty Space and Neruda Productions, which are smaller. And basically what we want to do is actually have someone who's hired to sell those programs to schools and other types, other places where programs that they have on offer could be actually sold or find money for them. It's complicated, and it's also risky because we're entering into unexplored territory, but we also thought that this is an area where we could have a great deal of impact, and it could actually be a very interesting way of increasing revenues for arts organizations throughout the region. And I won't say much more about Art Smarts or the arts, but there is an event that's coming up that would give you a good introduction to that. That's part of all this, and I'll let Gabrielle explain that. It's March 2nd.
Yes, March 2nd, we're going to kick off the whole project and the whole Arts Education Initiative with a special day for those interested and involved in arts education. So if you're an individual artist and that's something you would like to add to your practice, or you're a small arts organization who already has arts education products and projects, workshops, shows, etc., then this day is for you. So during the day, it'll be at the Button Factory, March 2nd, starting at 10 a.m. And during the day will be professional development for artists. So we'll take you through how to package your workshop, show, etc., how to make connections with the education system, how to market that, and all of those items. And we'll also teach you about connecting your work to the Ontario curriculum and how you can make those connections. And so that'll be the day portion, and then in the afternoon, evening portion of the day, we will invite educators to join us for the day, or for the evening, and we'll have a trade show and a showcase. So this is an opportunity for individual artists and small arts organizations to showcase their amazing works, because I know there's lots of you out there that have these really incredible things that you have to offer the education sector in social services and community centers, etc. So come on out and let's show off what we've got in the region, and that's about it. Yeah. So please connect with us on that.
Thanks very much. So that's just 2 of the 11 examples of recipients of the investment program, and we'll be tracking these organizations and monitoring and learning and benchmarking successes as we go along, so that we can learn how to observe how we want to customize our investment strategies as we secure the funding. So before I open it up to Q&A, I just wanted to remind people that if you're not on our mailing list and want to be on the mailing list, info@creativeenterprise.ca. And a lot of the information that Roger had referenced in terms of the historical development for Creative Enterprise Initiative, the strategic plans, the past updates, information sharing that we've done, it's all posted online and available for you. And on that note, I will open it up to any questions. Because we're recording it, we will ask that you grab a mic. Robin and Rose have microphones, and say who you are and ask away. Any first, though? It's hard to see. Majdi, of course. One, Majdi, and then we have to rotate to other people, and then we'll come back to you, because I'm sure there'll be more than one.
I'm just taking the initiative because no one raised their hand.
Oh,
I keep going back to the same idea that, so the strategic priority number 1 about securing investment and about the per capita funds. So this is the 3rd year in this fund. Empty Space, of course, is one of the probably most dynamic organizations in the region now. We haven't seen a dime of that money, and I bet no one in this room has received a dime of that money, other than the 50,000, like the per capita increase. Now, I have just finished a strategic plan. My strategic plan for 5 years calls for increased funding by about $30,000 from the City of Kitchener and securing annual funding from the region of Waterloo that is around the same amount, so another 30, plus additional numbers slotted for individual and private sponsorship, which I can work on. I have a plan to work on. So the question is how the creative enterprise is gonna advocate for me or help me achieve those goals, because as an organization, I was able to identify through an extensive strategic planning process that I am underfunded from the regional municipality and from the City of Kitchener. So if there has been, an increased secured investment in the sector, I didn't get any of it. I need it desperately. That's about $60,000 in additional new funds from the municipalities to achieve my goals in the coming 5 years. And what you're distributing in those investments is 50,000 around, which probably I need them all. So that's my question is, how can you help?
So there is a strategy, just like for you, that unfolds here with Creative Enterprise as well. So let's remember, so September 24th, 2009 was when the report was made to the community at the Waterloo Inn and Conference Center. The call to action there was twofold. One was to form the Barn Raisers Council, which is a council that actually was helped established by David Johnston before he was Governor General, and populated by him. Which assembles a group of people that establish community priorities and sustain them, and the other one was the Creative Enterprise organization. And that call to action that day was threefold, and that was to address a shortfall that was identified in the region somewhere between $3 and $5 million. And The first call was to the public sector, our public sector partners, suggesting to them that they should contribute $1 per capita at both the municipal level and at the regional level, which equals $1 million if everybody's in play. $1 million from the private sector, and $1 million from the province and the feds, because it had been determined that we were underfunded there as well. Where are we at in the agenda? Well, you can appreciate that our public sector investors, in the first year, the board was not alive, and there was a quiet conversation to strengthen existing organizations that were of interest to the municipalities in the region. And they're the organizations that you would have come to mind right away. The Symphony, the Museum, Plain Glass, and so on and so forth. Because that was their priority, there was stress in those organizations, and the first thing we wanted to do was just quietly sustain that so that there wouldn't be an unfortunate happening that hits the news, because that's not good for the community either. We are, so we've been having conversation with the province and the feds, and we are seeing some additional investment, but not enough yet. And we're only at the point in the agenda, as Heather said, with her only being on the ground for 7 or 8 months, where we're starting to engage the private sector. So how will it unfold, Majdi and others? I think there's conversations that are happening at the public sector tables that are different than they were in the first instance, to their credit, where some of the monies that we're receiving now are coming out of that $1 per capita for investment in what I'll call, perhaps incorrectly, mid-career opportunities, organizations that are alive and ready to go up over the top, and a lot of organic activity, sort of relevant culture that's emerging on the ground. We don't get the lion's share of those monies right now. It was 20,000 last year, to which we added $30,000 worth of private sector money. And there will be some amount of that happening again this year. We haven't got all of the final approvals. But a recognition on the part of our public sector investors that this work is important, that the things that we're talking about are important. The remainder of it's going to have to come from our building out of a council in the private sector and securing that private sector investment, which, if Heather went into more detail, is absolutely the priority by the end of 2012, to go get the better part of that $1 million. That's when I think things will start to unfold a little differently. And then the further strategy is, now we've welded our public sector together with our private sector. We as a community are saying this is absolutely important, and that's when we'll have the conversation with the province and the feds, when we're together and completely and strategically aligned. Does that help?
Yes, and just, does the Creative Enterprise play any, is it in playing any advocacy role? Is it advising municipalities and the regional municipality on how to distribute this increased investment? Or are you planning to do so? And if that first 3 years went to those anchor organizations, totally understandably, is there a plan in the next 3 years or the third 3 years or in 12 years to start channeling money away, not away, like on top of these 5 anchor organizations to the ones that need it most, who are flourishing and growing?
So the answer to that is absolutely yes. We are in a conversation and have been continually invited to take some leadership roles in having a conversation about how funding how funding is modeled or investment is modeled might be different.
There's a bunch. Yeah.
Oh, so then go first.
I have many questions, but I'll just start with one that was inspired what you were talking about, is the third step being, once you've got the municipal players, once you've got the private players going towards the province and the federal government. As part of this thinking, have you thought about what happens if you go to the province and the federal government and they say, we're sorry, the coffers are empty, we've got a big deficit, we can't fund you? Do we have a strategy for what to do for getting, if the province and Fed says, no, we're sorry, we'd love to, but we can't?
So, and that's absolutely what we're all reading right now, right? So it's a chicken and egg thing. Here I'll just use the province as an example. There are 2 things that have happened to our community that are of significance in terms of that relationship. One is that Waterloo Region was identified as one of the areas of growth of population, designated growth of population. So we are on our way to becoming a community of 750,000 people. They've also identified Waterloo Region and Guelph, along with only Toronto and Ottawa, as 3 communities that hold some promise for driving or creating another economy. In other words, prosperity, that they see as being important not only here, but across the nation as well. So that's a two-way conversation. If there are expectations to A, grow, and you need infrastructure, for that, or B, you've got to try and drive creative endeavor for the purposes of another kind of prosperity, then our view is, when the community is ready, that's a two-way street. We need to be provided with the kind of investment funds that build out the infrastructure that allow us to deliver on those two promises. So that's as best as I can describe it. The feds would be similar. They have a lot of investment in leadership that goes on here with global governance and thought leadership and so on and so forth. So it's a point of interest to them as well. So we've got to fight for it. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, Jane Mitchell, and I just have a question, and it's one that I've been wondering about for a while. Cambridge has an arts and culture center, just by their city hall, and it's really wonderful. But I don't see that in Kitchener, Waterloo. We have the Button Factory, but it's really tiny. They're cramped. I understand their roof needs to be replaced, and that could put them under, and all kinds of things. So, what's going to be done about creating space for artists, for musicians, and also with artists, we have a lot of digital artists and a lot of filmmakers and those kind of things. Their stuff that they need to use is really expensive. People that do glass blowing, their stuff is really expensive, so on. What is being done about that kind of infrastructure?
So I'll let Heather speak to this as well. On the way through the Creative Enterprise Task Force or Forum, there were all kinds of aspirations. There were 3 task forces at work. One was vision, what does this place look like when we're at our best? 2, what kind of structure might it have, and where are the needs there, kinds of things, physical things that you're talking about. And thirdly, resources. How do you resource this tremendous aspiration you have? So I would say that they're identified within that plan. If we were to pull those task force reports, the things you're talking about, whether it's live workspace or studio space, or when we get into the public world, we have aspirations to work with planning to designate or assemble some properties or assets that can't be gentrified. Much like you're seeing across other creative communities in the world. Berlin has a place of where it's 99-year lease. And you can't have happening what's happening on Queen Street, Toronto, or wherever, and then you start the whole migration. So those aspirations are there, but they're not in the early part of our agenda until we secure the kind of investment dollars. The need is great, and we've just got to go get the money to actually implement. Yeah.
We are trying to do what we can with the resources we have right now, and 2 comments on that. One is with the space that we're in discussions on here in Uptown Waterloo, and we will come back to the community once we are a little bit more down the path in terms of the details on it. There will be opportunities within that space it's several thousand square feet, to determine whether it is best used for various forms of digital media and renting out studio space there, or is it more appropriate for a different type of creative endeavor or partially mixed office space, etc. There's an opportunity for a retail front there. So we're just having some preliminary conversations on that. So that's an example of something that's tactical, that's tangible, within our means. This is completely donated to us. We're not spending any dollars in terms of securing a building per se. It's graciously donated by the developers to us to work with for a number of years. The second thing, again, where resources permit in terms of trying to do what we can, is an example with Quartz Lab, which was another recipient of our investment program, where they were able to secure a laser cutter for their studio environment and for their members to use. So that was a great use of the investment dollar program. Those laser cutters, as I understand it, run upwards of $40,000. And our $6,000 investment enabled them to source one overseas in China and bring it back here to the community. So bits and pieces wherever we can, but the larger picture, as Roger was alluding to, is what we're really looking for. And as we secure the larger investments, we'll be able to do more work in that area.
Hi, I'm Robert, and I am from Cambridge, and this is my 3rd Creative Enterprise Update meeting. So before I ask my question, make sure all of you come back to the next one, even if it's at the far end of the region. Make sure you come, because if you don't come, these people aren't going to be successful. And I was waiting for the Cambridge crowd to cheer as I came in the room. I don't think anybody else except the lady at the front is from Cambridge, but make sure you guys go to the next one. I really encourage you to do that. Okay, here's my question. I volunteer in the public sector. I'm retired, so I can do that. In the arts community. I live in the private sector. I work with all kinds of, including my relatives, I work with all kinds of starving artists. Now, what do you suggest that people do if they're not aligned to any organization? They don't belong to a group. They're not part of any jazz festival group. What do they do to be successful? Because they have always been, the majority of artists are those people, and they're really in desperate need. They're doing all kinds of work they hate doing, and they're giving up their art. If they can get the work, they can't get the work. And so all your ideas are wonderful, but remember, don't forget those people, because that's the majority of us, and we're out there and we have no money, and we can't do this. So I want to know what you think we should do.
Robert, thank you for coming again. And we did get a last-minute notification from a number of your colleagues from Cambridge who are on deadline and weren't able to make it at the last minute. I hear what you're saying, and hopefully through a number of the things we're offering right now, it's going to be obviously on an individual basis what works for any one individual artist and what their needs are, whether it's space, whether it's additional part-time work, whether it's not having to have those part-time jobs, whether it's being able to sell their offerings online. Everyone's going to have a different situation, and our intention is to provide services and access to expertise, whether it's one-on-one resources to help respond as best as we can in a group way, so group benefits and funding and marketing and promotion and publicity. Those are training and resources that we can provide on a group level. And then as we increase our resources and get to the point where we can do more, whether it's one-on-one coaching or sitting down individually with people to help them develop a plan to meet their individual needs, that's another example. But as I said, it really is an individual basis in terms of how we can support people. And that's probably not going to answer your question because it's a big question. But
well, can I just add that I have a suggestion. Number one, make sure that every organization, every business, like this one right here, or maybe some kind of an insurance company, or how about make sure every business has an artist in residence program, every one of them, so that it's just common. It's just a common thing. So I can walk into any store in the core and go, by the way, who's your artist in residence this month, this year, whatever you do, and what is the program? Yeah. That's one thing I think we need to do. Just make it normal.
And you did bring up that other comment about the insurance opportunity, which we have talked about internally with some economic development departments as well. I think the other thing that we're trying to do on a broad sectoral basis is to create the best environment for individual artists to succeed. So to make it the best opportunity, and that the audiences are available to you, and that it's creating the community that thrives and that has those people that want to partake in the arts and attend functions and purchase art like what Art Allies does. And then when the individual is ready for that kind of activity to happen, we've laid the table as best as we can. And I know Roger has a comment as well.
Yeah, and that's the work I think with many of the things that are going on, whether it's the Blues Festival or other things that are happening, is to continually make this place more vibrant, ever more vibrant, and look for partnership opportunities where those artists can show their work or whatever. So if we can build audience and build the kind of attention we want paid to the place and have people coming here sort of shouting beyond our borders, I think the opportunity grows. And your comment about artists in residence is a good one. We happened to, with Kathy's help, established a curator in residence at our firm, Walter Fady. So we're mounting 3 shows each year, which provide opportunities for several artists, both in terms of, and the reception that they have and showing, etc. So the more we build, I think, recognition that there's important work going on and are able to display it and encourage people to participate and get engaged with it, the more opportunity there will be. There's some responsibility on the artist's own to, you know, to be good, right? I mean.
Oh, there's a question right here.
Hi, my name's Terry Tora. I live in Kitchener. I'm a visual artist. I was part of the Cambridge Arts Forum, which was the group that actually established the Cambridge Centre for the Arts, which took us a number of years to complete. I'm hoping that we don't have to go through that process again in Kitchener because, as our regional councillor just mentioned, it's really important. I think there is a common element that visual artists need, and I'm speaking on their behalf, and that's gallery space that's available, that's beyond the mandate of our public galleries, which typically is traveling exhibitions, and they do show local work occasionally, but we need something that local artists have access to on a regular basis, that they can exhibit their work and sell, because, you know, we're producing the work, but it's really difficult to sell, and there's a number of great things that are going on, but they're somewhat limited, and it's much better than it was, but we still really need that gallery space. And I'm suggesting maybe a couple. I've exhibited at all the galleries in town, but I still need to exhibit more. I have a lot of work sitting around, and I would like to show it. And I know that there's other people that would as well, and we're having a social this Saturday. And I know that's going to be the topic of conversation, as it always is, when artists get together. So I think that's really important. And I might suggest, too, that there are a number of organizations available that you could actually send out surveys. There's a large, pretty large base there of, you know, to find out what the needs are. And I think you'll find that there's a lot of common needs there. So hopefully that can be addressed, you know, in that organic part that you mentioned, Roger. So anyway.
Thanks, Terry.
Any more questions? Oh, we've got one here. Yeah.
I wear many hats within many different organizations. And one of the problems we find is that people, on one hand, you know, the private citizen, yes, it's great for large organizations like, you know, this group here, or to be plugged into the community. But for in a lot of cases, the private citizens, you know, young families, retired people, feel overwhelmed with the amount of information and things there are to do. And in often cases, I found people just shut down altogether and say, forget it, I'll just stay at home. Or I'll go to Movieplex because that's what I know is playing, and I won't bother getting out there. So I wondered, and for us, finding our audience is always a challenge. You know, one of the groups I'm involved with is the Waterloo Chamber Players. We do great work. We've been around for 14, 15 years. We try advertising, but it's, you know, the advertising is often well out of our budget, whether it's even just a simple poster run. And so then trying to find the audience to sit, you know, in the pews to watch, and then so we can be sustaining is often very difficult. So I wondered, as part of this whole strategy, what does the CEI have planned for those smaller, you know, whether it's an independent artist wanting to put on a small show, or whether it's some startup organization about channeling, I guess, within that portal, here's the great stuff that's happening, but in the, I guess, the mass market advertising potential, whether it's through social media or other options, but at a price that's affordable for an organization with an annual budget of, you know, $500. So they can't afford a $2,000 you know, ad in the newspaper.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. It is part of the reason why we are taking the web portal to the next phase. Just one of the reasons, and that is to capture exactly what you spoke about in terms of those small, or not so small, but maybe hidden or not as prominent activities that are going on in the region, when there are so many things going on in this region every single day. And it drives me crazy when I hear people say, or anecdotally you hear people say, there's nothing going on, or what's going on, or where am I going to do, and what am I going to do, etc. There is so much going on, and we've been working to aggregate it, to build off of information that's already there, and really capturing it and promoting it out on the website. So for example, the things that you spoke of, we see our job in terms of helping with audience development to create those niche markets for you. And it's one of the reasons that I brought Robin Rhodes on, who is our Director of Audience Development and has done work for 25 years in this realm and spent 20 years with the Toronto Film Festival, reaching out to those hard to reach markets for maybe not the as well known activities going on. So for example, things like, we go around to a lot of cafes and all of the great artwork that is sold in cafes, or lectures that happen in cafes. We were at the Silver Spoon the other night and there was a great lecture. I can't remember the name of the, I'm sorry, Robin? Anyway, sorry, there was a great writer in there speaking that night, and that's the type of thing where it's not being promoted and it's not being marketed, but to get that online, to have a really quick way to get it out there to the community and create a presence for it. And not to say that there aren't going to be other vehicles as well. Not everybody is online, not everybody's doing Facebook and Twitter every single day or once a week at all. So we will have other vehicles as well, and as we continue to grow our operations and resources, that's a huge priority for us. And it's particularly important in terms of sustainability and helping organizations to be self-sustaining. So if we can create the distribution mechanism and awareness mechanism, again, it's up to those activities to have the content that people want to go to, but we will do as much as we can to make sure that the vehicles are there. Thank you, I think that's it. Oh.
I'll be quick, I promise. Hi, Terry Barna. We spent a lot of time today talking about how you're doing things for us. I would like to know for us as we leave the room tonight, what can we as an artist community do to help you do what you're trying to do?
Thank you, that's a great question. I think right off the bat, and this may not be, be supportive, be encouraging. I'm not asking for people to be united, because diversity of opinion and varying views on what's important is really healthy. But helping us to succeed by supporting us, or in terms of giving us information, in terms of articulating your needs, is one of the most important things. So when we do a quick Survey Monkey and we get, and I know some people they don't want to do any more surveys, or they're tired of doing surveys, but really one of the reasons that we do this is really, it's a quick check-in on the temperature of the research that we have to date. And it's really informative for us to help guide and make sure we're going in the right direction. So that's part of it. And I think when I say being supportive, it's sometimes there can be negativity or a lot of diverse activities and groups that maybe aren't working together. And the more we can work together to make this a great community and support each other. We are not the only organization out there that's involved in terms of making this a really great creative community. And so working together as much as we can to play off each other and reinforce the work that we're doing is really important. And I'm sure I'll have many other ways to answer your question.
So I think that the one thing that would be really great as well is to keep the conversation going. We don't have to go back very many years when the level of attention being paid to and the sort of work that's going on creatively here in the Waterloo region did not exist. It was dark. And that's all happened because we're talking about it. We're focused on it, and we know it's a big part of our future. So, as Heather says, being supportive is one thing, but I think there's a lot that, with the skills that are in the room and across the region, can be done just by being ambitious. Taking it out there. We know this is our agenda, and we've got to go. And so I think that kind of willpower, providing that, and when we need help and support, and when we need to put our heads together, when we need to be candid because we might be a little left of center or something like that. Those are all things I think we can do for each other. So.
That's it. That's a wrap. Thank you very much for coming out. We really appreciate everybody coming out tonight. jazz club's coming on. They just need to get set up, and it's going to be a great evening, so thank you.